Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Richard Withers. I'm the Bridge Inspection Program Manager for the Mississippi Department of Transportation, and today I'd like to share our oversized overweight permitting software, ExpressPass, with you. So, I guess some background is we were receiving approximately 200 oversized overweight permit requests each business day by phone, fax, or email. And you notice phone, fax, or email. So these all required someone to manually process these, and getting that number of permit requests in was just, the system was not sustainable. And on my side of things, we weren't really able to analyze all the bridges on the route. We were analyzing low capacity bridges in places. Bridges are on the route. You know, we have a set of bridges that if the load could pass those, we felt very comfortable with passing them across the bridges that are actually on the route. And we also, on the permitting side, for some of the lower capacity or lower weight permit requests, they were using historical data. They were, we developed a set of trucks and said that, these trucks can use these roads. And they had some statistical data that they used some software to look at and say, if this load went down this road last year or 2 years ago, then this load that we have a request for is similar, so we're going to use the same route. Well, all that being said, Mississippi needed an automated solution. So, in September of 2016, we put out an RFP for a web-based automated permitting system. ProMiles was selected as our contractor in December of 16, and then in November of 19, the system went live. And that's not a typo, that's 3 years it took to develop, test, and vet this system before we went live with it. It had an approximate cost of $2.3 million, of which $1 million was paid for by a grant from Federal Highways. Some of the features of the program, I'm not going to read through all of these, but if you look at them, it talks about the website, issuing permits to the website, receiving money to the website, integrating with financial management system, 24/7 access to permits, automated routing. The big thing I want y'all to get out of this is that it's 24/7. It's a website. It's like most everything else these days. It's online. It's accessible at any time. There doesn't have to be someone in an office waiting to process permits to come in. Permit comes in, and it is automatically processed in some form or fashion. One of the things that it does do that I think is very powerful is that it has a rerouting notification for customers, and that is, if you say you purchased a permit last week, and for some reason, somewhere on the route for that permit, there's a restriction now, the customer will get an email telling them that they need to contact our permits division and let us, talk to us because we have received a restriction on your route and we need to reroute you. But for the rest of the presentation, I want to discuss how ExpressPass integrates with BRR to analyze our overweight permit requests for bridge capacity. A little bit about Mississippi's overweight law. Any vehicle that exceeds the Mississippi legal weight limit requires an overweight permit. Anybody familiar with the Federal Bridge formula and the chart that accompanies it will be familiar with our state law. This chart has been copied and pasted into our state law. However, on our non-interstate routes, vehicles transporting some types of commodities can have single axle weights up to 20,000 pounds and a tandem axle weight of 44,000 pounds, which is 10,000 pounds more than is allowed by federal law. This is the screen that you would see when you get ready to, or when you go to the ExpressPass website. You, like everything else, you have username and password to log in. You can create a company profile, so that data is automatically populated inside the permit. I'll get into a little bit of that. There's videos, goes over fees, rules and regulations. So once you get your account set up and you created your company profile, you can select your company or your permit service company, and some of this information can be auto-populated. But this is the first screen you see to order a permit. You enter your contact information here, what kind of permit you're asking for, and also when you want to move. The next screen, you enter the vehicle that's going to be moving the load, what kind of load, what type of commodity it is, load description, then overall width, overall height, length, trailer length. And then this is where the ActoWare integration starts. Right here, when you get up to a certain weight, which for us right now is 120,000 pounds, you have to enter the weight of each individual axle and the axle spacing. So when you hit the enter weights button here, it's going to ask you, do you have a dual lane setup or not? Which, for those of us familiar with BRR, that's dual lane setup and non-standard gauge, which is represented here on the left side of the screen. And we put this picture in here. We thought, it appears that these guys are hauling a barge on a regular standard trailer. So even though this load is 3-4 times as wide as this trailer, as far as the bridge is concerned, it's still sitting on a regular truck. So that will be a standard configuration. If you have the standard configuration, you would hit the no button because we're not a dual lane setup. And you would enter your number of axles, individual axle spacings along the length of the vehicle and the weight of each axle, and it would tally up that weight for you. On the other hand, if you hit yes, I have a dual lane setup, we're asking our haulers to input the information needed to run an automated analysis of their vehicle. Anybody familiar with non-standard gauge analysis will recognize this. That's your distance to the left, from the center line of the vehicle to the leftmost wheel, and then the wheel spacings in between each one going to the right. In Mississippi, we are analyzing a set of dual tires as one tire. So we're calling this a 120-inch wide tire, as you'll see on the next screen. I'm sorry. Let me go over this first, then we'll get to the 20-inch wide tire. This was very similar to the previous single lane setup screen. You put in your number of axles, individual axle spacing along the length of the vehicle. But this is grayed out now, because after you tell it the number of tires, like I said, we're using, this is the steering axle, 2 tires, and then the first drive axle, we're saying just has 2 tires on it. But the first trailer axle is going to have 4 tires on it. Then you hit the configure button. Now this screen, anybody familiar with doing non-standard gauge analysis in VRR, we're familiar with how this screen is laid out. The distance from the center line of the transport to the leftmost wheel. And there's your set of dual wheels that we're calling a single wheel at 20 inches wide, and its individual weight, and then so on and so forth to fill out the rest of the information. The program automatically sums all the weights up and puts them in here for the weight of that axle. We do have a copy previous axle button that comes in handy because a lot of these loads, the axles are really similar. And You can just copy. A lot of them you just copy it and you're done, but sometimes you have to do modify weight or spacing. But it's a whole lot easier to modify it than it is to actually try to input all this information in again for each axle, especially when you have something that has 18, 20 axles. All right. So a little bit about how we're analyzing these vehicles. All the vehicles are analyzed at the operating rating level using load factor rating. Any vehicle that does not pass a load rating tool analysis is automatically sent to a bridge study for standard analysis in BRR. Here I'd like to give a shout out to Idaho Transportation Department and especially Shannon LaGuardia. She had a vision of something that could load rate permits very quickly. And the only way our system is working is we're using the load rating tool to do most of our analysis. Less than 120,000 pounds, they're routed using gross weight, number of axles, and overall length parameters. But once you get to 120 to 190, the load rating tool is doing the analysis, and we're using a passing rating factor of 1.1. The load rating tool currently will not analyze certain types of bridges like slab bridges or multi-cell box girder bridges, which we have a lot of. But we did some analysis and we're comfortable with bumping our passing rating factor up to 1.1 and saying that if it can pass all the bridges that the load rating tool currently looks at, it can pass the other bridges also. Now, once we get up to 190,000 pounds, that's considered a super load in Mississippi. So from 190 to 250, we're going to bump that passing rating factor up to 1.3, still using the load rating tool. That's getting to be a lot of weight, and we're not as confident that we'll be able to pass those loads across those bridges that aren't modeled. Again, if it doesn't pass the load rating tool, it'll drop down into the bridge study with the more than 250 and non-standard gauge loads. They have a standard BRR analysis run of a passing rating factor of 1.0. And we're using 1.0 with the standard analysis because we feel very comfortable that we have most all of our low capacity bridges modeled in BRR. So that standard analysis, it analyzes all those bridges. Every bridge on the route is being analyzed if it's got a model. We have almost all of our bridges modeled, except, the cable stay bridges or some of the bascule movable bridges that BRR won't handle directly. But we have rated those in other software or other methods. And in general, those spans have much higher capacity than what our standard girder bridges have. So we feel comfortable using that 1.0 rating factor for our standard BRR analysis. Now, a word on our posted bridges. Posted bridges are not considered for automated routing. When we first had the software, we had a hard stop on posted bridges. You couldn't route over, period. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but we had to change that to where you could possibly route over a posted bridge. It does require manual override and bridge division approval. We had some instances where loads were either originating or their destination was between two posted bridges and there was no other way around, no other way to get to where they were going. And we had to route across those posted bridges. But in general, we do not permit over posted bridges, and they are not considered for automated routing. They have to have a manual process to get approved. Talking about our bridge studies, any vehicle that requires a standard BRR analysis is automatically placed in a bridge study. A standard gauge vehicle, which is 6-foot gauge width, is analyzed at each bridge on the route at 4 different crossing parameters: normal travel, reduced speed, escorted, and full restrictions. We're varying the impact factor and live load distribution factor and again, in the load factor analysis to get these different restrictions. Normal travel is mixed traffic. They can travel at regular speeds. Reduced speed is they have to travel no more than 30 miles an hour, but they can be in mixed traffic. Escorted is they have to be the only vehicle on the bridge and travel down the center line of the bridge. They have to travel down the center line of the bridge, and but they can travel at full speed. Now, full restrictions is a crawl speed, center line bridge, only vehicle on the bridge. And the way we're getting those in the analysis, normal travel is going to have an impact factor of 1. There's no reduction in impact factor. So that's not the actual impact factor. It's a factor applied to the impact factor. Live load distribution factors will be multi-lane LLDF. Reduced speed, we cut the impact factor in half. It still has the multi-lane live load distribution factor. Escorted, we bump impact factor back up to 1 because they're going full speed. But so we're using a single lane live load distribution factor. Full restrictions, no impact, and single lane. Non-standard gauge vehicles, they're analyzed at 3 different crossing parameters, and the only thing we're varying here is the impact factor. Every vehicle is assumed to go down the center line of the bridge, and that they are the only vehicle on the bridge. All non-standard gauge vehicles in Mississippi have an escort, so we are confident in getting these parameters for non-standard gauge vehicles. Again, escorted, they're running full speed, but again, center line bridge, only vehicle on the bridge. Reduced speed, we're cutting the impact factor in half. So they're going a maximum of 30 miles an hour, and the full restriction is crawl speed. Center line of the bridge, only vehicle on the bridge. You know, that's their last option for trying to get to where they're going. All right, so looking at the bridge study screen in ExpressPass, the top of the screen allows you to filter on bridge studies, find bridge studies by several different parameters: bridge study ID, permit number, permit ID. I guess permit ID, as soon as a permit application comes in, it's assigned a permit ID, and that follows it throughout the process. Permit number is the permit number on the permit that is issued to the hauler. It does not. There's no permit number until you get an approval of the permit. This particular view you're looking at is filtered by bridge studies that have not been approved. So this is a queue that, as a load rater, you'll be looking at when you are going to review bridge studies. There's information about each permit here. There's a bridge study ID, permit ID, company name, gross vehicle weight, and you can see that there's no approval, they're all blank. And is the analysis complete? That's the automated analysis that ExpressPass does using DRR. So these are complete. There's 17 bridges in this study. 9 of them ran. They had an automatic analysis. 1 of them failed analysis, which is good. There are 8 manual bridges, which I'll get to in a minute. Of the 9 bridges that ran, all of them are normal travel, which means they have no restrictions, and no reduced speed, escorted, or full restriction bridges. And the 8 run correspond to 8 manual bridges. Open up a bridge study by clicking on the bridge study ID on the previous screen. You can see this is the study of the individual bridge. This is the screen for the individual bridge study. And there's your study ID, permit type, superload, more than 190,000 pounds, it's 520,000. Some more information, and all, can't see this below the screenshot, but if you scroll down here, all the bridges that are on the route will be there. One of the things that I find very useful is that you can click on the permit ID here, and it takes you to a screen that has all the information about this permit. Here you see the vehicle load. On the next screen is just scroll down, to see all the information about the vehicle load. It has the truck overall dimensions, and then down here, the axles, individual axle weights, number of tires on each axle. That covers all the vehicle load. Any change that's been made to the permit is logged on this tab. Documents and PDFs. We use this a lot to have a hauler upload a schematic of their truck, trailer, and load for our review. Fee items, special item payments, I don't really mess with a lot of that. That's on the financial side. There are notes that you can add. But this one, the route, very helpful. You click on the route. This is a lot of what, when I first started doing this years ago, this would be the route you get. I-110 Alabama to I-10, 3.0 miles northeast of North Gulfport. Doesn't really tell me exactly where they're going. They're on I-10 in Alabama, and then they're in Gulfport. Down here below, there's turn-by-turn directions. You can actually see some of the restrictions on this particular permit. But you click this button, and you get a map of the route. Come in on I-10 from Alabama, and here is their destination. So now we know the exact route, and I have the gifts on where they're going. And if you check this box, you can get all the bridges on the route. And then if you go to the bridges, individual balloon, it'll tell you information about each of those bridges if you just wanted to look on the screen and see what bridge is out there trying to cross. So that is very helpful. Like I said, when I first started doing this, you'd spend most of your time trying to figure out an individual route and where they are, what bridges they're going to cross. It's all automatically done for you. The hauler puts in the route, so they know exactly where they're going, where they're coming from. Now, if we go the view axle button here, it shows you permit. You have a tabular view of the load. If you click this button, but you can click the view axle button here, and it takes you to a screen that looks just exactly like the input. Shows everything, axle spacings, number of axles, weight of each individual axle, tires, but everything's grayed out. You can't change anything, but you can at least view what has been input. And then, of course, you hit the configure button and see the non-standard gauge information, if that's just a non-standard gauge load. Also, scroll down to the bottom of the bridge study screen and hit the display configuration button, and you can either view a side view of load, and this is to scale, or a top view, I guess an elevation and a plan view for engineering terminology. Now the lateral spacings are not to scale, but the longitudinal along the vehicle are to scale. The ASHTO file here button, what that does is it generates a file that has every bridge that's crossed in by the load, and it also has the load, the vehicle information inside of it, and you can actually go into BRR using the open route function to run that file and do a manual analysis. The not run file is almost exactly the same, but it only has in it the manual bridges, which are ones that the ExpressPass was not able to run automatically. It has those bridges in there, plus any bridge that failed. That way, you can get those bridges, load rate them in VRR, and manually manipulate them. A little bit about the manual bridges. Right now, the API that allows third-party software to talk to VRR will not allow certain types of bridges, such as multi-cell box area bridges, to be automatically analyzed. We are currently testing a fix that ProMiles has come up with. It's pretty neat. It actually takes a automated process to open up VRR, and if you watch it, you can see the cursor moving around automatically to different screens, inputting the information automatically, but it's a manual input. And after that is implemented, hopefully this number of manual bridges will drop drastically. Now, if you can wait to 7.0, that 7.0's API is going to be completely rewritten, and it will be able to process all types of bridges. If VRR will do it, the API will transfer it to a third-party software. So hopefully by the end of the year, manual bridges are a thing of the past, but right now we do have some manual processing that we have to do. And then up here, I thought this was an interesting screenshot. This is a non-standard gauge analysis. This bridge study had 10 bridges on it, I believe, but it took you 3.5 days to process it. So that's the great thing about I was talking about 24/7. 24/7 ExpressPass is analyzing bridges. As they come in, it just automatically analyzes them. Nobody has to come in the morning, open up VRR, go load a vehicle up, select some bridges, and start analyzing. It's all happening automatically in the background. It's very powerful that no one has to sit in front of the computer and make sure that it's analyzing properly. So that 3.5 days, yeah, that's a long time, but it's running 24/7. So it ran all through 24 hours a day, all through the night, all day long, without anybody having to touch that. That has helped us out tremendously. So getting down to the individual bridge in a study, this is a live link to if you click on this link, it takes you to the Bridge Division website with an SI&A sheet. It has all the NBI information on it. We have links to a map, everything from old PONA system, load rating summary, bridge plans, project plans, pile records, as-built plans, inspection pictures, critical findings. This is our string profile application, posting application, and the old bars file. That's some of you may remember the AASHTO bars bridge analysis and rating system. That's what we used to rate our bridges before we had VRR, and we have an individual file folder for each one of those bars files, and so we dump a lot of information into those folders, and it just got called the bars file, so that's what we put on our website. But back to this screen, where it shows us the type of bridge, years built, max span length, structure name. This is the name that we have painted on the side of the bridge. Most people know that this would be US 45, number 226.0B. That's how we kind of identify our bridges in Mississippi. Still got the old sufficiency rating in there. It's kind of a good indicator of whether we have an okay bridge or not. But we did include the deck, super, sub, and culvert ratings, so you can see at a glance this bridge is in good shape. I would not hesitate to permanent cross it as long as we have good rating factors. It is on US Highway 45, crosses Front Street and the railroad, and then its location. And then here it says AASHTO BR status, which means if it's a low rating tool, it will have a low rating tool status. this was a normal bridge rating status, so and it did pass the rating. With the restriction, you notice this corresponds to normal travel, so full impact, multi-lane live load distribution factor is less than 1, so it did not pass the analysis. Now, the next, next crossing parameter is reduced speed. We got impact half, and we still got a multi-lane live load distribution factor. So the program automatically populates reduced speed here. The person reviewing this can drop this down and change it to whatever restriction they want, or even deny it if they want to. One of the things that we did have implemented was if there's a manual status here, or this is not set to some sort of restriction, you can't approve the bridge study. All the manual bridges have to be reviewed, and all of these have to be set to a certain restriction. One of the neat things about what ProMiles was able to figure out is that, if I wanted to run this impact and single lane or multi-lane or live load, multi-lane or single lane live load distribution factor, I'd have to make 4 different runs to get all these variables. They can do all this in one run of the bridge through the API. So we get all of our crossing conditions just through one run. So that's, in a nutshell, what ExpressPass looks like, a bridge study within ExpressPass, and our crossing conditions. I do want to go over some lessons learned. And one of the hardest lessons was no matter how much testing you do, there's going to be issues. We found that we had a lot of bridge models that had issues. The worst issue was it would be a multi-cell box splitter that would run for an hour and return all zeros. So of course all those failed and got kicked out as a manual run. So I do have to say I have a engineer that works with me, Rod Roberts. He has done an outstanding job over the last few months of plowing through the models that have problems and fixing them so that we're getting a lot cleaner runs now. The pandemic has affected us somewhat, but one thing it has done is it's given Rod he's been at the house grinding through these models, and he has really, really done a lot of work getting our models up to snuff. So when you run into these issues, you be prepared for some long days. We had some long days that were very frustrating, but it's just going to be part of it. Your system is hit. There's no way you can hit your system the way they get hit in a production system with the amount and volume of requests that you get. Let's give yourself an out. This is what I'm talking about with our posted bridges. We had a hard stop on posted bridges, and about a week into it, starting up our production system, we got a permit request where the guy had to go between 2 posted bridges with a delivery. And we had to call ProMiles and get them to manually route that through there because we couldn't do it. There was nobody at Mississippi DOT that could override that stop. So you need protocols in place to make sure that, you have maybe 2 or 3 levels of approval to do things like that, but you need to be able to get the load where it needs to go. And then maintenance. How to keep the system up to date with the latest bridge data. We're sending a file to ProMiles every night. It has bridge information on it, such as the lat long, clearances. They're using the vertical and horizontal clearances that we collect as part of the MBI data to route also. Information like the deck super 7 culvert, that's in there, so that's feeding directly out of our inspection collection software. So as inspections are approved and things change, it automatically gets updated on the ExpressPass end. One of the things that is sort of, and it's a limitation of BRR is in the loading tool, is the entire inventory has to be rerun each time you upgrade BRR. It takes us about a week to do that. If you could just grab your whole inventory and tell it go, rerun all the data, rerun all the bridges, it would be one thing. But we find that you can run about 300 or 400 bridges, and then we get a crash. Now, you can go back into the data. You don't lose that data. It's right into a file. You can figure out the last bridge that it rated, and then you can, start from there. But it gets to be painful, and we just decided that instead of going through the crash, we would go county by county. And like I said, it takes about a week to run it, but still, it's got to be part of your upgrade plan. And with that, I just want to say thank you. Appreciate you letting me share our ExpressPass program with you. I think it has come a long way, and it's a good system, and we're striving to make it better.